Namaste and welcome to the 125th edition of the Bharatvaarta Weekly. Thank you for joining us. I am Roshan Karyappa. I have with me Abhishek and Neerav, and we're going to run you through the news and events of the week that was. And it's been a pretty eventful week, I should say. We had the Adani Hindenburg report that came out, and that affected the stock markets pretty adversely. We also had the Padma Awards being declared on the 25th. Of course, last week we celebrated the 74th Republic Day. The former US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has made some controversial remarks in his new book. The 21 Andaman and Nicobar Islands have been renamed after the Paramveer Chakra winners. And then there's the Pakistan in the Indus Water Treaty modification as well. So all of this and more on this Bharatvaarta Weekly. As you know, we publish episodes on politics, policy, and culture every week. So if you are a returning visitor, do consider rating us and reviewing us. If you're a new visitor, follow us and subscribe to us for more such content. Well, let's talk about the episode we put out last week. It was pretty interesting. I mean, it's something that's taken us almost 2 years to put together. But yeah, we had Shubhendu and Sarthak, two young, talented lawyers, talk about the drafting of the constitution, its significance, and the relevance of it in the present day as well. Neerav, what do you think about the episode?
Yeah, so I think, see, it was quite a nice one. You had like one practicing lawyer who's working in the Supreme Court, as well as someone who's like doing his LLM in the US. So they give a nice perspective and they give comparison of like how India kind of looks too much overseas, whereas the US, for its constitution, doesn't look overseas at all. Another one I liked was about the whole concept about judicial overreach, and is the Supreme Court judging on things where it is either not qualified or not meant to. For example, are the vaccines effective or not? That's a scientific question. That is not a constitutional or a legal question, right? A lot of those kind of things, and like the inconsistency. So anyway, it's a nice thing that we are like at Bharatvarta, like people are talking about this stuff, we are relaying it out there, and people sometimes take like two emotional arguments, like either the judiciary supreme or whether all three arms of the government are equal, etc. Right? And another fascinating part was, for me at least, it was very informative about the framing of the constitution, the constituent committee. B.R. Ambedkar was a chair, but like other people like B.N. Rao or D.P. Khetan, their backgrounds, how we had like women framing the constitution right from day one. And unlike the US, where they said all men have equal rights, we have all human beings have equal rights, right? It was very informative episode for someone like very far removed from the legal world or the constitutional world. Very informative, very well worth the time. So I hope all listeners, viewers do catch that episode. Definitely worth your time.
For sure, I think it was a super interesting episode for me as well. I mean, I'm also far removed from the legal world as such, so it was interesting to understand the various nuances and so on, right? And especially over the last few weeks or months, we've had this constant back and forth between the judiciary and the executive. So yeah, it was nice to see the framework in which all of this plays out. Do catch that episode if you haven't already. It's out on all platforms. All right, let's begin with the first piece of news. On Wednesday, short seller Hindenburg revealed that they took a short position against the Adani Group based on the report titled How the World's Third Richest Man is Pulling the Largest Con in Corporate History. Hindenburg claims their 2 year investigation of the Adani Group revealed that the conglomerate engaged in a brazen stock manipulation and accounting fraud scheme over the course of decades. Adani Group responded to these allegations, saying that these reports are maliciously mischievous, unsubstantiated, and misrepresenting data. The report, however, has resulted in the Adani Group stocks crashing over 20% in a few days. Nirav, what do you make of this?
Okay, so like let's take a look, like take a step back, right? So one is, who's Hindenburg? Hindenburg is a company which kind of looks at like overvalued companies or like frauds, and like decides to short their shares for a profit, right? And there's nothing wrong in it at all. Two is the previous one. What really got them famous was looking at the electric truck maker Nikola, and they have kind of said that there it was like an accounting, not just an accounting fraud, but also it was overstating its ability on like delivering electric trucks, right? So what all allegations, that I went through the whole report actually, what all allegations they've made, to be fair, you look at like any, not just Indian but East Asian, any Asian company, you would find such kind of irregularities. It is like, I would say, like a developed market research report on an emerging market kind of company. you talk about like auditors being there for 40 years, but a lot of these are like promoter driven companies, very relationship driven companies. So that is there. Adani Group, they've got like seven now, you include the cement business, but like six listed companies. So Adani Ports, Adani Enterprises, Adani Transmission, Adani Green, then they have ACC and Ambuja Cements, right? So all of these companies, they are listed. They also, like, if you look at it, that the accusation is that the stock price has been manipulated by some other entities buying stocks of it from like via Mauritius or via tax havens, right? So that we cannot really claim the true or false. I would say like a 5% research team sitting in New York. I'll tell you the timing. They've released this at the time where Adani was looking to raise more money by selling its stake in Adani Enterprises. Adani Group previously was valued at about over $200 billion, and altogether, so all the companies, so Adani Enterprises, Adani Transmission, Adani Ports, Adani Total, which is a joint venture with the French gas company Total, Adani Wilmar, which is with the Singapore listed company on agri commodities, and Ambuja Cements and ACC. All of them together have like lost about 20% of their market cap, varying differently. And this is about like $35 billion total. So, one thing is that Adani Enterprises was looking to raise about $2.5 billion in a follow on public offering, where they are raising money, where the promoter is selling their stake. And this was already 1.5 times subscribed by the 25th of Jan by the institutional investors. But this came out where this kind of hits the retail investors, where who may choose not to invest now, right? And so this is one thing. Second thing is that out of the six Adani companies, only two have like futures and options listed. So that's an easy way to short sell. I am not sure whether Hindenburg actually has set up an FPI license. See, it's a very US stock company, right? So FPI license where they can like actually have an ability to short on the National Stock Exchange. But Adani also has about $8 billion of debt in US dollars in offshore bonds, right? And those are easy to borrow and short sell. So I think what Hindenburg has said is that they've shorted their bonds, which also have fallen about 10 to 20%. Now I want to like say about the Adani Group. See, Adani Group's main business is building infrastructure. They own like the largest port in India, Mundra, but they own like five other ports. They own a few airports, right? They own power plants. So their modus operandi has been that because of like investing in infrastructure where the government is going to spend money, where there is an expansion in policy, they borrow at whatever 8% ish, etc. And all these projects take 3 to 5 years time. And after that, they give them an IRR of about 12%. So there's a lot of like project risk, whether will the projects be completed on time or have they been successful at that. And so far they have been. Second thing is that they've grown very fast. Adani Group has grown about 25x in the last decade, right? From 8 billion market cap to over 25 billion market cap, right? So obviously when there's like a very rapid, fast growth, this is also like a levered bet on like India's infrastructure spending or India's growth in that area, right? You can say probably maybe the stock is overvalued, maybe it isn't. I would say like the lot of the governance red flags, whatever they've mentioned, is probably in like most Indian promoter run companies. And I think you look at things like Adani's ability to execute projects on time and efficiently is not questioned there, right? So compared to like their thing on Nikola, where they say that, oh, Nikola, they cannot produce those electric trucks at that cost, right? Or the technology isn't there, the battery takes too long, etc. I think on the technical side, Adani is doing whatever they're doing, but this is a bad timing for them. Second thing is, based on the lofty valuations, right? Adani Ports could get into a JV with Haifa Port in Israel, Adani Wilmar in agri commodities, or Adani Total in like gas distribution, right? All of this he could leverage based on high stock prices. High stock prices make your companies attractive enough. You can pledge those shares and borrow money against it, etc. Right? So there are accusations that there are like offshore companies which are like investing in Adani shares, which are basically proxy for Adani family people's money. So maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. If it was, it should have been disclosed. But now the question is, it is like a David versus Goliath thing. in any kind of battles, even if there are people who are manipulating stocks, people with deeper pockets will squeeze out shorts. So that is one thing. Second thing is, I think that the timing or this much research is very difficult to do sitting half the world away. So they've been fed by somebody locally who either has a political agenda or is probably like actively shorting the shares, so has done something of that sort. And this, maybe the whole market has lost money. It takes, all these things have like a 1 week kind of news cycle. Let's see what happens after that. I think Adani company is here to stay. You can look at a company from two perspectives. One is from stock owners perspective, right? And their perspective, yes, you can say that, oh, the shares are overvalued, they're forecasting huge exponential growth. So they're assuming that India grows a lot, Adani gets a lot of those projects, and all of them are profitable and like etc. Right? And that is one way of looking at things. But the other side, you have to see that, can they be a going concern and do they have enough to refinance their debt? In the offshore debt, they have a lot of debt maturing in 2024, which is next year. Next is also when the election cycle is there. And now people do know that Adani Group has been pretty close to Narendra Modi. And since the time when Modi was the CM of Gujarat, etc. So there's rollover risk that all the debt which is maturing, will they refinance that debt at a higher cost? So then their profitability kind of reduces, and they are a leveraged group. So that is there. Two is, if a new government comes in and probably they will give more contracts away or renegotiate contracts away and give it to other people, right? So that is another risk as well. And so that is there. And people are saying, oh no, they have so much debt. But to be fair, a lot of their debt is offshore. For a 200 billion or now maybe like 160 billion dollar market capitalized company, their offshore debt is about $8 billion. A lot of, maybe their shares are pledged out and they've kind of borrowed in US dollars or somewhere in Mauritius or other places, which probably isn't known in private loans. The exposure of PSU banks is about less than a percent, right, of their total balance sheet to Adani Group. And in private sector banks like ICICI, HDFC, etc., is even lower. So that is one thing which you can say, okay, that it's not as if all banking sector will collapse if Adani ceases to pay anything. If even if Adani defaults, there are enough reserves that the whole banking system, etc., has. Yes, it'll be a hit, that is there. Second thing is, if Adani continues to keep growing, right, and if they are a credit worthy customer and they keep paying their debt, that is good interest income for the banking sector, where like you have like a lot of other things where there are non-performing assets. And lastly, there are some accusations of like related party transactions or money being siphoned out, etc., etc. But you think about it, like if a person who's got the Adani family together owns like different companies of different, I think the lowest is in Adani Total, which is like 49%, but most of the companies is 70 to 74% is owned by the Adani family. And the accusation is that they actually own more than 75%, right? Like via other entities. If that is the case, then Adani has like more skin in the game. Like if all these losses have happened, he's lost the most money himself, right? So in that case, it is like in their best interest to run the company in the most profitable way. He's not like a fly-by-night operator who's like going away. Unlike Nikola, which is a startup, etc., this is a company which has been operating for over 40 years. They've got hard physical assets. They've got like steady cash flows. And actually, when you're running companies like utilities, you're running power generation, power transmission, ports, airports, these are actually recession proof businesses, right? Because this, there is not that much. One accusation, I agree, that Adani Group has grown very fast. They've borrowed a lot, and have they bitten off more than they can chew? That can happen at times where I can give an example. Like Tata Group, they probably overpaid for Tata Steel, Jaguar Land Rover. They took on a lot of debt. There were a lot of issues. But because the group was well diversified, TCS was a cash cow, etc., they've like all managed, right? So you go through, maybe the stock falls, yes. But I would say that Adani remains as a going concern, right? And things about like a small audit firm auditing the parent company, but each operating company is actually audited by like the big four auditors. So all those kind of things are there. In a relationship driven, in a promoter driven company, it's very different, right? You cannot hold it to the same standard that you would hold like a Coca-Cola or a PNG or a Unilever, etc. So that is what it is. I think it is a very opportunistic timing that you say, okay, when is somebody the most vulnerable? When they're trying to raise more money, and that's when they've hit them where it hurts the most. Maybe it is politically motivated, maybe it's business motivated, but I think they have achieved whatever they wanted to. And in terms of Adani Group came out with a very fast like presentation, which is like very badly formatted, etc., hitting back at the accusations and threatening to sue. And Hindenburg has said that okay, if you want to sue us in the US, but probably if Adani wants to sue them, we'll sue them in India. That depends. Let's see. But let's see how it plays out. I think these things will come and go. Maybe the stock was overvalued. It was fine. It's down 20%. Let's see. They call for the stock to fall 80 to 85%, right? That would be pretty drastic. That hits like a lot of retail investors. But again, this is owned, as I said, 75% is owned by the family, right? Or little less than 75%. So retail investors and mutual funds, etc., are like smaller. And I think even if the stock price falls that much, it will still remain a going concern, right? And so that is that. I think let the story play out over a period of time. The other thing, it came out on the day where Adani got the right for the Ahmedabad women's IPL team, right? And it seems that the Adani group was more focused there. Suddenly, this came out of nowhere. But let's wait and watch, and we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, you've summarized pretty much everything there is to, talk about on this, except I'll just add one point that, there was a lot of Schadenfreude, there was a lot of negativity, I don't know, with people talking about, hey, he deserved this, it's long time coming, etc. But I don't get it. I mean, the guy is literally building everything from, ports to power plants. He's helping us become energy independent. He's solving really hard problems in logistics, infrastructure. For a country like ours, right, an emerging economy at a per capita of like $2,000. So why wouldn't you want him to succeed, right?
Oh
So
yeah, I think Adani Group, like Reliance Group, Tata Group, construction companies like Larsen and Toubro, and all the other big conglomerates, right? Like Vedanta Group, right, which is trying to get into semiconductors. These are all like Japanese call them, I think Kairetsu, like the Honda, Toyota, etc. Or like in Korea they call them Chaebol, right? Like Samsung, LG, Hyundai, right? And I think okay, they shouldn't be above the law. That is obviously true. But if these people succeed or they execute large scale projects, I think people do benefit quite a bit. And another one, which the most sometimes the most hated company is trading at a 400 PE, that is the Adani Green. They're betting big on green hydrogen, right? That is like a very on a side interest of mine. It is hydrogen. You get hydrogen coming in from solar power plants, so the source of electricity is green. With electrolysis, you break water into hydrogen and oxygen. So the whole chemistry, the whole technology, we are going from a hydrocarbon based chemistry to power everything to maybe a hydrogen based chemistry. So from like a carbon chemistry, we are going to go to hydrogen. And whoever succeeds here, it will be massive. So I think Reliance Group and Adani Group are spending a lot of money. It's very early. I don't know if it succeeds or no or whatever. And a high stock market valuation enables them to take more risk. That's all what I can say. Is it too overvalued? Maybe it is. I don't really follow stocks in detail. And these are all betting on the optionality in the future, to be fair. That's what it is. We'll see what happens. Fingers crossed that if this happens, it's helps solve India's energy problems quite a bit and makes us less dependent on energy imports.
So SEBI has also confirmed that it will increase scrutiny of all the transactions of the Adani Group, and that it will be taking into account the Hindenburg Report as well. All right, moving on. The Padma Awards were announced on the 25th. The Padma Awards, as you know, is the highest civilian awards of the country and are given in various disciplines such as art, social work, public affairs, and so on. These awards are conferred by the President of India at ceremonial functions which are held at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. For this year, the list comprises 6 Padma Vibhushan, 9 Padma Bhushan, and 91 Padma Shri awards. Abhishek, did you see some familiar names there? I mean, I could count 3 or 4 that were, very familiar to me.
Yeah, definitely. So, as we know, the last few years, the government has used the Padma Awards to sort of highlight the contribution of the outstanding work of many citizens who are not, very well known nationally, but they have done tremendous things at perhaps a local or state level. So that trend of sort of celebrating unsung heroes continued, right? Like we were discussing expert snake catchers from the Irula tribe, right? Uh, they received the award this year for animal welfare, right? So similarly, on that theme, there are many. Among the more familiar names, I think, to begin with, from the Padma Vibhushan standpoint, right, which is the second highest award we have. So Zakir Hussain, he received it, and so did posthumously Mulayam Singh, right, as well as S.M. Krishna, the former External Affairs Minister and former CM of Karnataka. So those were some famous names in the Padma Vibhushan category. Coming to Padma Bhushan, I think S.L. Bhairappa's name definitely is one to talk about. Prolific author in Kannada, and I would say a very influential author, right? Especially for those on the right side of the spectrum, right? Some other famous names here include Sudha Murthy for her social work, or Kapil Kapoor, historian from Delhi, right? Some other names in the Padma Shri include Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, right, who received it posthumously, unfortunately passed away last year, right? So, yeah, these were some of the names. Coming to the entertainment side of things, Ravina Tandon and also Kira Vani, right, who's now been in the news recently for Natu Natu, but he's of course had a great career spreading decades. So, yeah, these were some of the names that caught my
Yeah, I was
attention.
pleasantly surprised to see, Zakir Hussain ji, because I watched him live just last week, with the band Shakti, and he was phenomenal, right? And such a great brand ambassador for Indian arts and culture, right? And Sri S.L. Bhairappa ji also, I mean, is really such a legend, right? His books are a must read for anyone wanting to understand more about our history and culture. So I was, really happy that these folks, were recognized. We also celebrated the 74th Republic Day on Thursday, and as usual, it was a mix of the country's military prowess and the cultural diversity, and the emergence of a new India. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi was the chief guest at the parade. The Egyptian army contingent also marched on Kartavya Path. Uh, Abhishek, any highlights from the RD parade this time?
Yeah, I mean, interesting that else like CC from Egypt was invited, right? So, of course, his visit was, brought out some outrage, right? That India's inviting a quote unquote dictator, right? So, the funny thing about him is like Trump had once called him my favorite dictator. Uh, but jokes apart, Egypt is a very crucial nation in the Middle East sort of area, right? It sort of straddles Africa and the Arab world. It has enormous natural resources which are crucial right now, right, in this energy, in a world facing energy crisis, right, in some ways. It is also a nation which is at the front line of, or let's say this government there is at the front line of combating Islamism, right? Because if you just recall back a few years, there was this Tahrir Square episode, right? And the whole Arab Spring thing, right? And so there was a democratically elected government in Egypt, but that was having the backing of the radical Islamist group, the Muslim Brotherhood, right? And so there was a coup, and then Sisi came into power with the backing of the military. And so, the Arab world is one where there are two not great choices that they have, right? So you either get democratically elected Islamists or you get secular dictators, right? And probably for the West and even India, I guess the secular dictators are better. And so, in that sense, I mean, it obviously causes a lot of heartburn for people who are talking about democratic rights and things like that. But for the purpose of stability, I suppose a leader like Sisi is better for even the US, right? I mean, he's visited the US twice, which is something, right? And so, yeah, I think India and Egypt are, of course, looking to strengthen their partnership in various areas, whether it is export of Indian goods and services there or cooperation in the field of energy, trade, and so on. And so, yeah, I think the Middle East is an area which India continues to focus. I think we've been developing very strong relationships with Israel, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt now. So, yeah, I think that was something of interest during this trip. So, this was actually the first Republic Day parade with foreign participation since the pandemic, right? So, I think we had to skip for 2 years, and then this was the first foreign presidential visit we had.
All right, moving on. Former US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has made some controversial remarks in his new book, Never Give an Inch Fighting for the America I Love, referring to former Foreign Minister, the late Sushma Swaraj, as his original counterpart. He said she was, to quote, not an important player on the Indian foreign policy team. He even went to the extent of describing Sushma Swaraj as, to quote, a goofball and a heartland political hack. Reacting to this, Dr. Jaishankar has responded saying that he always held her in great esteem and he deplores the disrespectful colloquialism used for her. Nirav, just some few saucy comments to sell a book, perhaps.
Yeah, so I think, see, here Mike Pompeo is now looking even probably at the 2024 US elections, right? And even if he might run as a Republican candidate or no, or he might be lobbying for like a big post if a Republican wins the presidency, right? So that is one thing. Second is, see, he's got like comments all around, right? Like after retirement, this is one easy way. You want to make money, you want to be in the public eye, etc. Right? So you want to sell your book as well. So he made some saucy comments, but also this tells you more about Mike Pompeo himself. He not being able to understand Sushma Swaraj or not, that also tells you that his preconceived notion about her being like a heartland political hack, right? Is he doesn't understand India that well, and that is very true. Like what has happened over the years. Now, no disrespect to Dr. S. Shankar. He's a diplomat. He was like very well suited for the job. He's very articulate in multiple languages, etc. Right? People mistake articulateness as like effectiveness, right? And those are two different things. You can have both, or you can have one but not the other, etc. Right? So maybe Mike Pompeo judging Sushma Swaraj is talking maybe about his own biases. He's also said about like Jamal Khashoggi being more of an activist than a journalist, etc. Right? So he's riled up, he's ruffled a lot of feathers, but you always want to ruffle up some feathers. If there's some controversy, there's something saucy, then more people want to read your book, right? People, that's why we are talking about it. Maybe there are other people who are writing books and we don't have any idea about it, right? So maybe that's the thing. The section which he's spoken about Sushma Swaraj and his interaction was the talk about like Pulwama and Balakot, and he said that how close that probably India and Pakistan could have been on the brink of nuclear war or no. That's another good thing, I would say, that here, because it's a book written in the US aimed at the American public, right? This kind of educates people because Americans, they are very insular. They know a lot, little, they know little about rest of the world, right? All their media, that news is all focused very inward. And up till now, like Pakistan was the US ally, all foreign policy, all of that. When these things come out, and when this kind of changes people's opinions, and then when people vote in a particular way, though like foreign policy is like very minimal, at the margin it kind of reflects US policy could be drifting a little more towards India than towards Pakistan. But you look at the Biden administration, they've given Pakistan aid again. They've given some new fighter planes, etc., right? Saying that it helps them to fight Taliban in Afghanistan, etc. But like, yeah, these can be misused as well. So yes, I think in that sense, maybe talking about this part is possibly like a good thing. And him saying that he preferred Ajit Doval or S. Shankar over Sushma Swaraj is talking about his own biases. Or sometimes some people get along or some people don't. Maybe Sushma Swaraj being a lady, having a different language where she's more comfortable in, right, could lead to these biases. But all in all, I'm happy that at least somebody's talking about India and probably talking about India in like a good
Yeah.
light. So
Hey, I mean, India is prominent enough to feature in that book, and I mean, there's so much more interest. about Indian geopolitics, right? So that itself, I think, is a promising sign, irrespective of the somewhat stupid remarks that he might have made. Well, on Monday, Prime Minister Narendra Modi named 21 islands in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands uh, after recipients of the Paramveer Chakra. The Paramveer Chakra, of course, is India's highest gallantry award in war. It was established in 1947, and since 21 armed forces personnel have been honored with it. Prime Minister Modi said the islands were named after war heroes and that they will be a source of inspiration for people. Abhishek, this is a nice gesture, right?
Yes, so I think the announcement was made on the 23rd of January, right, on Netaji's birth anniversary. So there were two basic announcements, right? First one being the naming of 21 unnamed islands after Paramveer Chakra awardees. The second was that there will be a national memorial dedicated to Netaji to be built on Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose Dweep, earlier known as Ross Islands. So yeah, I think a very nice gesture, and of course the Andaman Nicobar Islands generally, is sort of absent from a lot of the mainstream discussions, but it is definitely a potential spot for not just nature tourism but even history based tourism. So it has a lot of historical significance, right? And so I think this is a good step in that direction to sort of bring attention to that place.
Meanwhile, the Trinamool Congress TMC chief and West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee alleged that renaming the 21 islands in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands was a tool to gain popularity. Well, we'll leave that to itself.
So that is not the most, let's say, contrarian take I saw. So the more contrarian one I saw was an article where someone said that, naming these islands after people who from the armed forces or soldiers is basically an attack on the native culture, right? And also it shows like you want to subjugate the people of these islands with all this. So it was like, okay, like you always read something which blows your mind.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I think if this is just sheer political genius from Prime Minister Modi, or it's just people falling over themselves to make an ass of themselves, right? With these kind of comments and remarks. Well, New Delhi has issued a notice to Islamabad seeking modification of the more than 6-decade-old Indus Waters Treaty that governs the sharing of waters of 6 rivers in the Indus system between the two countries. New Delhi said the notice follows Pakistan's continued intransigence in implementing the treaty by raising repeated objections to the construction of hydel projects on the Indian side. India hopes the modification will lead to an update of the IWT to incorporate the lessons learned over the last 62 years. Nirav, what is the significance of this?
Oh yeah, sure. So basically, Indus and the five rivers where Punjab gets its name from, right? Like Satluj, Chenab, Ravi, Bias. All of these they flow from India, like Kashmir and Punjab, like into Pakistan. And India is just so there is a water sharing treaty earlier. Now, what India is saying is that by building a couple of hydel projects, this is like both countries have to come together at a table and agree to it, right? We cannot just dam off all rivers and divert it, etc. Right? So that is one thing. This is India is trying to say like the details are not out, but probably it is just when you dam up a river after even like generating hydroelectricity, store some water, the total net flow remains the same. It's just that it's stored on the residence time through like water, what it passes through, and some of it is goes through a turbine and then flows again. It does flow into Pakistan itself. You're not trying to divert a river or whatever. Maybe some of the water gets consumed or is in the water table in India. So, couple of things that helps agriculture on the Indian side. If we generate a lot more power, maybe helps more electrification as well as a little bit more industrialization. If we remember, the Bhakra Nangal Dam built in the 50s helped like the first generation of industrialization in Punjab. The legacy of that is, I would say, Hero Cycles is one of the first factories, etc. We set up because of the excess power of the Bhakra Nangal Dam, right? So maybe see this is what India needs. Two is Pakistan is going through like multiple crises of its own, and that's why it's going to like try and like act hard and like try to negotiate hard. But maybe at this time India has more leverage. Anyways, I just hope that this gets sorted. The build more infra on our side. We use that water for, like, say, more agriculture, as well as because the water table in Punjab, etc., is also depleting, right? So that also helps us on our side a bit. And if we generate more power, we can do like a lot more things. Maybe we need all that power for future electric vehicles, or maybe more industrialization, right? And there are more jobs in Kashmir Valley and all of those places. So anything between India and Pakistan takes like decades. So I'm not very hopeful anything comes out very soon, but this kickstarts like a positive thing somewhere in the midterm, medium term.
All right, that brings us to the end of the Bharatvaarta Weekly. If you are still with us, thank you so much, for staying with us. And if you like the content, do share this content with your family and friends. We have a few interesting episodes lined up. We have a Velinas Talk episode. As some of you may know, I mean, this is the geopolitical series that we've been running. We also have the episode with Shashank Mattu, who writes for the Live Mint, that's going to go live this week, perhaps. I'm also recording an episode on fintech innovation and regulation, and there's plenty that's happened on that front. Some of you may remember the episode we did with Mandar Kagade and Monica Jasuja some time back. This time we'll have another person, Sumita Kalea, as well, join them in discussion. So yeah, plenty of good content lined up. Again, thank you so much for being with us. And from Abhishek, Neerav, and myself, stay safe, take care, and Jai Hind.